Greetings! Welcome to This, That, and the Other, where I react to, respond to, comment on, question, or otherwise propound on whatever I find of interest on any given day. Now, today's topic
no death when you see it, old man.
Gandalf did not move. At that moment, somewhere in the city, a cock crowed. As if in answer, from far away came another note. Horns! 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 Rohan had come at last. At last. The moment we've been waiting for. The moment we've been building up to for the last 11 hours. The Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Now, Gandalf did not move. At that moment, somewhere in the city, a cock crowed. As if in answer, from far away came another note. Horns! 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 Rohan had come at last. The Lord of the Nazgul left the gate and vanished. At the edge of the field, the riders of Rohan had assembled. Theoden stood in his stirrups and cried in a loud voice, clearer than any there had ever heard a mortal man achieve before.
Arise! Arise, riders of Theoden! Spears shall be shaken! Shields shall be splintered! A sword day! A red day! And the sun rises!
Which is pretty close to what Tolkien wrote. Except no one shouted,
Yeah!
He took a horn from his standard bearer and blew such a blast that the horn split. All the horns lifted up like a storm upon the plain and thunder in the mountains. His golden shield shone like an image of the sun. To the sound of some of the most beautiful music ever written, the Rohirrim charged. Confusion reigned, to say the least, mainly between Tolkien's description and Jackson's depiction. But there's so much going on, you probably didn't notice the differences. The main thing is that Rohan quickly, relatively speaking, destroyed or routed the orcs. The forces of Sauron now consisted mainly of Southrons, the evil men of the south, the Haradrim. And regardless of what Jackson says, the Mumakil didn't show up till later. As Theoden sat upon the snowmane seeking new clothes, the sky darkened. Snowmane reared in terror and was pierced by a black dart. He fell, crushing the king beneath him. They were not picked up and flung across the field. A great shadow descended, a winged creature, a creature of an older world perhaps. Upon it sat a shape, black-mantled, huge and threatening. Guess who? The Witch King bore down on Theoden's broken body. Eowyn, still disguised, and Merry stood protecting him. The basis of Tolkien's scene is here, with only the inevitable and totally unnecessary Jacksonian revisions. The biggest of which is the "no man, no I am no man" exchange was at the beginning of the confrontation rather than at the end. The rest just served to extend the scene, for dramatic purposes.
Fool! No man can kill me. Die now.
I am no man.
Theoden's dying speech was given to Mary, not Eowyn, so the content was considerably different. He never knew that Eowyn lay near him on the battlefield.
I go to my fathers, in whose mighty company I shall not now feel ashamed.
Éomer came riding up, and with his last ounce of strength, Theoden indicated that the king's banner should be given to Éomer, saying, "Hail, King of the Marten," and died. Only then did Éomer spy his sister lying among the dead. No one seemed to notice Mary. How did Aragorn get there? He's still on a ship. A number of the Rohirrim made makeshift stretchers and bore Theoden and Éowyn to the city. Mary trudged alongside. He was not lost among the bodies on the field. The party met Prince Imrahil, who, after paying respect to Theoden, noticed Éowyn was still breathing and sent a rider into the city to get aid. Now, how did Gandalf get there? He was up in the city dealing with Denethor. And still, more of the enemy came. The monstrous Mumakil, now they show up, ran rampant. And contrary to Jackson's version, quote, wherever the Mumakil came, there the horses would not go, but blenched and swerved away, and the great monsters were unfought, and stood like towers of defense, and the Haradrim rallied about them, unquote. But how did Theoden get there? He's dead! Did Jackson ever actually read the book? The Rohirrim were surrounded. Then, the ships of the Corsairs arrived at the Harlan, and the hearts of the men of the West were filled with despair. And then, wonder took hold, and a great joy. Éomer cast his sword up in the sunlight and sang as he caught it. All eyes followed his gaze. Upon the foremost ship, a great standard broke, and the wind caught it and displayed it. There flowered a white tree, Gorgondo. But 7 stars were about it, and a high crown above it, signs of Elendil that no lord had borne for years beyond count. I wish Jackson had been smart enough to show this. It would have been such an awesome sight. And as noted, there was no army of the dead, but an army of southern Gondorians, and absolutely no elvish acrobatics from Legolas. Still, the forces of the enemy were dismayed, finding themselves between the hammer and the anvil. Aragorn and Éomer met in the midst of battle and clasped hands. Hard fighting was still ahead, but by the end of the day, not one living foe was left within the field. Now we need to back up a few hours and rejoin the original thread. The arrival of Rohan had forced the Black Rider to action, but Gandalf remained still. Pippin was finally able to approach him, and almost in a state of panic, poured out his story. Gandalf and Pippin headed for the Street of Silence. On the way, Gandalf left Shadowfax at the stable, so they reached the house of the stewards on foot. Pippin's friend Baragond, another character who should have been in the movie, was holding Denethor's servants at bay, preventing them from lighting the fire. Realizing Denethor had entered full B-movie evil madman mode, Gandalf takes charge of the situation as only he can. While verbally confronting Denethor, he strode to the table and lifted Faramir and carried him towards the door himself. He didn't rely on Pippin, and he didn't have Shadowfax. Now, leaving Baragond and Pippin to transport Faramir to the Houses of Healing, Gandalf turned his full attention to Denethor's fevered rantings. Now, remember when I said readers of the book, but not viewers of the movie, would find out about the seventh Palantir? Well, in a Saruman-esque moment, Denethor revealed it, when he thrust the flame into the oak-soaked wood of the pyre and lay himself down on it. Gandalf left the chamber and closed the door. And a few moments later, those outside heard a great cry. And Gandalf laments, so passes Denethor, son of Ecthelion. No dramatic run down the hall and off the terrace. They proceeded to the Houses of Healing, and the next two semi-omitted chapters. First is a 14-page chapter, of which Jackson gives us a measly 1.5 minutes, plus another minute of his own stuff. Then a 10-page chapter, compressed into 4 minutes, which includes information from other parts of the book, and a few more characters. The Houses of Healing. Normally a fairly typical hospital, or the nearest Middle-earth equivalent. But with the big battle just outside, it's become a bit of a madhouse. Faramir, Éowyn, and Merry, and other victims of the battle have been brought in for care. These three in particularly bad shape, since their injuries were not just your run-of-the-mill broken bones and wounds. These injuries were accompanied by the Black Breath. That is, the Lord of the Nazgul got his grubby hands on them. Merry had followed the men carrying Faramir and Éowyn into the city, but fell behind, sat at the side of the street exhausted. He was found there by Pippin, who Gandalf had sent out to look for. They tried to carry on, but had to stop frequently to rest. Bergil, Baragond's son, happened by, and Pippin told him to inform Gandalf that they had found Merry, who was in no condition to continue on his own. Gandalf soon appeared. He took a brief moment to gloat over convincing Elrond to allow the young hobbits to join the fellowship. As evening approached, so did Aragorn, Éomer, and Prince Imrahil. As they neared the houses, Aragorn removed all tokens of office that he bore, pulled his cloak around him, and became Strider, the captain of the Rangers, once again. He did not wish to create the tumult that would have ensued if word spread that the king was there. He visited his 3 patients, called for Ioreth, one of the women caring for the wounded, asking for a certain herb, Athelis. Ioreth, known throughout the city for her loquacity, begins explaining, no, they don't have that, and neither do they have it under their more rustic name of Kingsfoil, and they never really thought much of the yada yada yada. Remember back at Weathertop, when Strider told Sam to look for that same herb? That was stolen from this scene. Messengers were sent out to find some, by whatever name. Strider sent about doing doctor things, like boiling water and cleaning the wounds. Urgil and returned with a handful of the herb. Aragorn breathed on the leaves, crushed them, and added them to bowls of steaming water so that the stricken could breathe the healing vapors. He went first to Faramir. Faramir stirred and opened his eyes. My lord, you called me. I come. What does the king command? Now, that gets me almost as teared up as, my friends, you bow to no one. Ioreth heard the word king, and the rumors spread through the city. Then Éowyn. Aragorn perceived that she suffered the most, since she was wounded not only in body, but in spirit. He and Éomer discussed all that Éowyn had endured over the years, and especially the recent months. Aragorn observed, quote, few other griefs have more bitterness and shame for a man's heart than to behold the love of a lady so fair and brave that cannot be returned. He then wisely placed Éowyn's hand in her brother's and bade Éomer to call to her, slipping silently from the chamber. Last, and certainly not least, Meriadoc. Mary was not in quite as bad shape as the other 2. After the same routine with the herbs, Mary began to stir, and very hobbit-like said, I am hungry. What time is it? Aragorn tried to slip away, but the rumors had preceded him. People were waiting for him outside the houses of healing, begging for his aid in healing their friends and kin. He sent for the sons of Elrond, and the 3 of them labored into the night. It's a shame Peter Jackson has no heart and only cares about violence. Now this scene is what I might call humanity on steroids. I'm not a very emotional person, but there are parts of these 14 pages that can really tug at the heart. To only show 1 minute and 20 seconds of it, all Éowyn, it's a crime. But moving along, the next morning, Legolas and Gimli visit Pippin and Merry in the houses of healing, while Aragorn, Éomer, Imrahil, Gandalf, and the sons of Elrond have a meeting in Aragorn's tent outside the city. So the entire movie scene is basically nonsense, as far as the visual presentation. Anything of any importance in the book has been cut out and stuck in the movie somewhere else. Some, however, is left here. Legolas and Gimli told Merry and Pippin of their journey with Aragorn, through the paths of the dead, routing the corsairs, and freeing their slaves and captives, releasing the dead from their oath, manning the ships with free men, and setting sail for Minas Tirith. Much of the discussion at the meeting of the captains is similar in both versions, although Jackson made sure the verbiage was different. And of course, Imrahil and the sons of Elrond were there, and Gimli and Legolas were not. But Jackson does occasionally come up with a good line, like Gimli's,
Certainty of death? Small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
Aragorn admits to having shown himself to Sauron in the Palantir back at Helm's Deep, rather than doing it now. And it's unclear which Palantir this is, the one from Orthanc that Gandalf had, or the Minas Tirith one that Denethor had with him on the pyre. After all was said, it was determined that in 2 days, a force of 7,000 would set out for the Black Gate of Mordor. However, we need to wait until our next visit. We've run out of time again, but it will be worth the wait. Thanks for watching, and do all that and support the channel stuff if you want, especially the donate. I doubt that I will ever have the 1,000 subscribers needed to qualify for any YouTube support. So that's really the best way to help.